Have you ever asked yourself, among the countless battles a human life must face, which one is truly the hardest? Many people believe it is the battle against circumstances, against fate, or against external enemies. Yet the greatest sages and warriors in history all share the same answer. The greatest enemy is not out there. It resides within ourselves. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary Japanese swordsman, author of the Book of Five Rings, fought hundreds of life and death duels. He never lost a single match. But what made his name endure through time was not only his mastery of the sword, but also his simple yet profound philosophy. He who masters himself, masters life. Mastering oneself is never an easy journey. It demands that we confront our weaknesses, subdue our anger, cultivate discipline day by day, and dare to step beyond the comfort of the familiar. A person who cannot control their emotions will be controlled by them. One who fails to practice discipline will be swept away by circumstances. And when we lose the ability to govern ourselves, we also lose the right to govern our destiny. Musashi lived with austerity, trained relentlessly, and observed the world with awakened eyes. He not only teaches us how to wield a sword, but also how to wield willpower firmly. Today, we no longer walk onto battlefields with blades in our hands, yet every morning when we wake, we still face a silent war. The war against procrastination, against doubt, and against the fears that dwell within our own minds. If you long to reclaim inner strength, if you want to learn how to walk through life with unshakable composure, then following in Musashi's footsteps will reveal many valuable insights. Let us delve into the philosophy of mastering oneself and discover that only by conquering the self can we truly conquer life. And if you find value in these reflections, don't forget to hit subscribe. That is the simplest way to journey together as we train the mind, seek tranquility, and cultivate inner strength amidst a world in constant turmoil. Number 1. Master yourself. Mastering oneself may sound simple at first, but in truth, it is a journey far more difficult and enduring than any conquest in the outside world. Defeating another person often happens in a moment, but defeating the self is a battle that lasts a lifetime. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary Japanese swordsman, affirmed many times that to firmly grasp the sword in one's hand, one must first firmly grasp the mind and body. A person who cannot control their anger, who cannot overcome laziness, who cannot subdue fear, no matter how powerful their weapon, will still be easily defeated. To master yourself begins with mastering your emotions. Emotions are like water. When calm, they nurture life. When furious, they can sweep everything away. One who does not master emotions will let anger turn into reckless actions. Let fear paralyze their steps. Let pride cloud their reason. Musashi once wrote, "If the mind is disturbed, the body will be disturbed. If the mind is steady, the body will naturally respond." The foundation of every victory, whether on the battlefield or in life, begins with inner tranquility. In reality, we can easily see that many people fail not for lack of ability, but for lack of composure. A job interview can be ruined simply by anxiety. An investment opportunity can be lost because greed outweighs reason. A relationship can collapse in a moment of sudden anger. Mastering emotions does not mean suppressing or denying them, but recognizing them, understanding their roots, and directing them toward what is beneficial. To master yourself also means to master your thinking. Musashi believed that victory begins with clear thought. A sharp sword cannot save a blind mind. Mastering thought means cultivating the ability to observe, to analyze, and to make wise decisions rather than being led by instinct. One who masters their thinking does not act according to the crowd, nor allow the noise outside to drown out the clarity within. Western Stoic philosophy resonates with this truth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Our life is what our thoughts make it. The mind becomes what it feeds on each day." When the mind is filled with negativity, anxiety, and envy, life reflects exactly that color. Conversely, when we nurture positive thoughts directed toward action and values, we create a brighter reality. Furthermore, mastering yourself is shown through mastering habits. One of the clearest ways to see who truly governs their life is to observe their daily habits. Musashi practiced the sword tirelessly, even after becoming a master. He believed that disciplined repetition was the foundation of strength. Those who do not master their habits will soon be mastered by them. Habits of waking late, procrastination, and overconsumption all silently drain energy and willpower. In modern society, perhaps you do not wield a sword in combat, but you still face an invisible blade called discipline. Those who maintain good habits every day, even reading a single page, doing a few exercises, or writing a short journal entry, are winning small battles on the long journey of self-mastery. Another aspect that cannot be overlooked is mastering desire. Human beings are driven by endless cravings: wealth, fame, power, recognition. Musashi chose to live ascetically, unattached to possessions or luxury, because he understood that the more we cling to desire, the more we lose our freedom. When we crave something excessively, we become its slave. Those who hunger for money at all costs will be easily deceived. Those who hunger for fame too much will lose their true essence. Those who hunger for love blindly will bind themselves in suffering. Mastering desire does not mean rejecting natural needs altogether, but knowing what is enough, when to stop, and what to choose. One who masters desire will live simply but powerfully free and unbound. The opposite of one who masters themselves is one enslaved by themselves. These are people who let emotions rule, let desires drag them, let bad habits control them. They live like a boat without a rudder, drifting with the current of circumstances. A word of praise makes them happy for a day. A word of criticism robs them of many nights' sleep. They think they are living, but in truth, they are merely reacting to external pushes. Musashi once said, "If you do not control yourself, you will be controlled by others." Indeed, one who does not master the self is easily manipulated, easily swept into the games of others, and struggles to build the life they truly want. By contrast, the one who masters themselves is the freest person. They do not need the world outside to be gentle to feel at peace. They do not wait for others to offer opportunities, for they create them with persistence. They do not fear loss because they know that true value lies within inner strength. Throughout history, those who left the deepest mark were those who first learned to govern themselves. Musashi became an undefeated swordsman, not by luck, but because he trained himself to the point where no fear or anger could shake him. Stoic philosophers like Seneca and Epictetus left behind enduring legacies because they lived in the spirit of self-mastery, tranquil in the face of ups and downs, steadfast in the face of adversity. In today's noisy world, self-mastery is more necessary than ever. Phones, social media, the relentless pace of work, All can become opponents that rob us of focus and drain our strength. But if we keep discipline, control emotions, maintain healthy habits, and govern our desires, we will regain balance and power. Mastering yourself is not a distant goal. It begins with small things. Restraining anger when criticized, choosing to read instead of scrolling mindlessly, and rising early, instead of clinging to the alarm. Each small victory over the self accumulates into great strength. In conclusion, to master yourself is to govern emotions, thoughts, habits, and desires. It is not a journey of a single day but a lifelong training. As Musashi proved, only when you hold firmly the rudder of your inner world can you truly steer the ship of life to where you wish to go. Number 2. Iron discipline. If one had to choose a core foundation for mastering the self, discipline would be the most crucial key. Miyamoto Musashi once lived through long years of austerity, not because he could not choose a life of comfort, but because he understood that only discipline could forge true strength. In the Book of Five Rings, he wrote, "Not a day passes without my sharpening the sword, and not a day passes without my sharpening myself." These words are not only for the martial path, but also a reminder of how we should live each day. At first glance, discipline may appear like a restriction, a set of rigid rules we are forced to obey. Yet in reality, discipline is the path to freedom. A disciplined person does not flounder in whims. They are not led by emotions or desires, nor do they rely on the environment around them to stay focused. By contrast, the undisciplined become slaves to bad habits and procrastination. Imagine a warrior who enters battle but neglects training, relying only on natural talent. When faced with an opponent who has trained diligently every single day, can he truly stand firm? Or a student who procrastinates until the exam draws near, scrambling in panic, can he ever compare with the one who devotes steady hours of review each day? Discipline is neither flashy nor loud, yet it creates the most enduring difference. Musashi became an undefeated swordsman, not merely through innate talent, but through the harsh standards he set for himself. He often wandered alone, living sparingly in caves, far from luxury and bustling cities. There were days he ate only the simplest of meals, yet still trained for hours in wind and rain. For him, steady repetition mattered more than fleeting bursts of inspiration. This reflects a clear truth. Discipline is not always comfortable. It demands sacrifice, patience, and an acceptance of hardship. But it is precisely within those hard moments that human willpower is tempered. Musashi did not only train his body, he also trained his mind. Learning to face fatigue, to overcome loneliness, and to keep walking forward even when motivation ran dry. Today, we do not need to sharpen swords to survive battlefields, but discipline retains its value. Instead of honing blades, we hone our minds and our habits. A disciplined person knows how to manage time, refusing to drift amidst countless temptations. As simple as setting an early rising time, maintaining an exercise routine, reading instead of scrolling aimlessly, or working before seeking entertainment, all are expressions of discipline. A successful entrepreneur is not one who constantly produces genius ideas, but one who persistently executes plans each day, learning and adjusting without cease. An Olympic athlete does not win by luck, but by thousands of grueling hours of training repetition until the body responds automatically. Even an ordinary person, if committed to maintaining good habits over many years, will carve out a life of difference. In contrast, the greatest danger of lacking discipline is procrastination. Procrastination is the invisible enemy, whispering, "There's still plenty of time, tomorrow will do." Yet the truth is that time waits for no one. A single day of delay is a day of lost opportunity for self-cultivation. Gradually, procrastination hardens into habit, and habit becomes destiny. Musashi would never have become an undefeated swordsman had he allowed himself to procrastinate. For him, every moment of life carried value. And so it is a reminder for us, act now, even if only in a small step. The power of discipline does not lie in sudden breakthroughs, but in steady, persistent repetition each day. From Musashi's story, we can draw practical lessons. First, begin with the smallest things. Just as Musashi trained each sword stroke, we can begin by maintaining a simple habit, such as reading 10 pages a day or doing a few minutes of morning exercise. Second, regard repetition as strength. An action repeated daily for 365 days becomes instinct. Third, accept hardship as part of the process. Fatigue and discouragement are not signs of failure, but proof that we are stepping beyond the comfort zone. Discipline is not a destination but a journey. There is never a day when we can say, "From now on, I am disciplined enough. I need no further training." Just as muscles weaken if left untrained, discipline must be cultivated continually. Musashi understood this well, and so, even at the height of his fame, he continued training as though a beginner. In today's world filled with temptations, discipline becomes an even sharper weapon. One who masters discipline is not ensnared by endless social media, nor do short-term pleasures destroy long-term goals. By contrast, the undisciplined are easily distracted, easily discouraged, and ultimately lose sight of their own dreams. In conclusion, discipline is the path to true freedom. It is not chains that bind, but the rudder that steers the ship in the right direction. Musashi wielded discipline to become a legend. As for us, if we learn to cultivate discipline in the small acts of daily life, step by step, we too shall master ourselves and open the way to a life no longer ruled by external forces. Number 3. The spirit of selflessness. If discipline is the root from which inner strength grows, then the spirit of selflessness is the fruit that nourishes freedom in the soul. After decades wandering across battlefields, Miyamoto Musashi grasped a truth both simple and profound. An oversized ego is the barrier that prevents people from touching true peace. He refused to live in luxury, refused ranks and honors that many desired, all to keep his spirit unbound. For Musashi, only those who can let go of the ego can observe clearly, act wisely, and fight with their full strength. Selflessness does not mean denying oneself or living without goals. It is not about belittling oneself, but about rising above the small ego that constantly craves recognition, victory, and praise. As long as one is entangled in that ego, one is easily wounded by praise or criticism, easily swept into meaningless rivalries. Musashi once said, "The true warrior does not care what others think of him, but whether he is walking the right path." For him, selflessness meant holding firmly to core values and acting with reason, not being led by selfish pride. After becoming renowned throughout Japan, Musashi could have indulged in glory. Yet he chose a simple life, dwelling in caves or humble huts. spending most of his time painting, writing, and meditating. He understood that clinging to fame only burdened the mind. This is the clearest expression of selflessness, not being dependent on applause or external power, but focusing on cultivating inner strength. This recalls the wisdom of other sages. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, though ruler of a vast empire, constantly reminded himself, "Fame is emptiness, only right action holds value." From east to west, from Japanese swordsman to Roman philosopher, they met in one truth. To live peacefully and powerfully, one must first let go of the ego. In modern society, the ego has countless ways to bind us. Social media is the most obvious example. We easily tie our worth to likes, comments, and fleeting judgments. A single negative remark can rob us of sleep. A single person's success can stir our insecurity and envy. The ego constantly demands recognition, yet the more we feed it, the emptier we feel. Musashi would remind us, true value does not lie in what others think, but in whether we live true to our principles. The selfless person does not play the game of comparison. They work hard for themselves, not to prove something to the world. In combat, a swordsman ruled by ego will easily fail. If he craves victory too much to prove himself, he loses composure. If he fears losing honor too much, he acts rashly. By contrast, the selfless fighter battles not for ego but for what is right. They focus completely on each movement, each breath, undistracted by cheers or fear. It is this selflessness that creates absolute strength. The same applies in modern life. If we work only to prove we are better than others, we fall into rivalry, stress, and confusion. But if we focus on doing our best not for ego, but for genuine value, we work more effectively and peacefully. The spirit of selflessness does not come overnight. It requires persistent training. We can start with small things. When criticized, instead of reacting to defend the ego, listen and seek what truly needs improvement. When successful, instead of rushing to boast, and remain humble and continue practicing. When tempted to compare, remind yourself that each person has their own path, and ego only misleads us. One effective practice is meditation or journaling. When sitting still and observing thoughts, we realize that much of our sorrow, anger, and anxiety arises from the ego's endless demands. Recognizing it is the first step to letting go. The selfless person is the freest. They do not need praise to feel worthy, nor fear that criticism will diminish them. They are not bound by rivalry, so their minds stay light. They can live, simply yet serenely, face adversity without losing composure. Musashi proved this with his life. His refusal of honors and choice of ascetic path was not disdain for life, but a way to keep the highest freedom. Freedom from the ego's control. In conclusion, the spirit of selflessness is not living without goals, but living beyond the small ego. The selfless remain humble, focus on true value, and are not ruled by praise or blame. It was this spirit that made Musashi an immortal legend. And it is also the key for us to find freedom in a world full of temptations and comparisons. Number 4. Steadfast in hardship. In the life of Miyamoto Musashi, what earned the reverence of later generations was not only his extraordinary swordsmanship, but also his unwavering will in the face of hardship. He lived through days of simplicity and austerity, at times dwelling in mountain caves, surviving on the most basic food, training from dawn until late at night without a single complaint. This was not merely a lifestyle, but a philosophy of training. To voluntarily step into hardship, to forge willpower, so that no adversity could ever subdue his spirit. In Musashi's eyes, hardship was not an enemy, but a teacher. If discipline forms strength, then hardship is the testing ground, the forge that tempers character. A sword that is never thrust into the fire and hammered upon the anvil will never be sharp. Likewise, a person who has never endured difficulty will struggle to gain true inner strength. Musashi fought in hundreds of battles, and not all under favorable conditions. At times, he faced enemies vastly outnumbering him. At times, he fought with scarce weapons. Yet it was, in those harsh situations, that his intellect and spirit shone brightest. Hardship teaches creativity, endurance, and the ability to stand firm amid storms. What is most admirable is that Musashi did not wait for hardship to come before learning endurance. He deliberately chose the path of hardship. Even after fame spread, when he could have enjoyed luxury, he chose ascetic living, treating it as a training ground for his will. He knew that comfort too soon weakens people, while hardship keeps the spirit sharp. The philosopher Seneca once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." He who has never faced adversity has never discovered his true strength. From Japan to Rome, from swordsmen to philosophers, all shared one conviction: growth cannot happen without hardship. Yet hardship only becomes a forge when one remains steadfast. Many fall not because their challenges are too great, but because they lack the persistence to continue. Steadfastness means holding to the goal, though the road is rough, not letting momentary setbacks break your stride. Musashi pursued the way of the sword his entire life, never once abandoning it, and it was this steadfastness that made him a legend. In modern life, steadfastness remains decisive. An entrepreneur may face dozens of failures, but if he persists in belief, continues learning and improving, success will eventually come. A person training their body may often feel tempted to quit, but if they persist in routine, results will follow. Steadfastness is the bridge between dreams and reality. Today we live in a society of comfort, where ease is readily available. Yet it is precisely comfort that weakens the will. We fear hardship, avoid fatigue, and seek shortcuts. But a life without challenge yields only superficiality. The hardships of today may not be Musashi's brutal battlefields, but they appear in countless forms: work pressure, financial struggles, illness, or emotional trials. If we remain steadfast, we emerge stronger than ever. One who loses a job may see it as an end or as a chance for a new beginning. One who endures heartbreak may drown in despair or turn it into strength to understand and love more deeply. Hardship never disappears, but how we face it determines everything. Musashi cultivated steadfastness by embracing austerity, training relentlessly, and setting clear goals. We too can learn through small, practical steps. Choose one important goal and commit to it fully, no matter the obstacles. Accept hardship as an inevitable part of the journey, rather than resenting it. Recognize every small progress to sustain motivation. Most importantly, remember that each person walks a unique path. There is no need for comparison, for each individual's hardship is their own. The steadfast possess a quiet strength that is unmistakable, calm in adversity, endurance in struggle, and patience to wait for results. They do not rush, they do not quit, and they do not allow short-term temptations to destroy long-term goals. This strength carried Musashi through hundreds of battles, and it is the same strength that can help us weather life's storms. In conclusion to this fourth pillar, steadfastness in hardship is indispensable to self-mastery. Hardship is like fire that tests gold. The greater the trial, the brighter the will shines. The steadfast not only overcome adversity, but turn it into a springboard for growth. Musashi used hardship to forge himself into a legend. And we, if we dare to face hardship and walk forward with persistence, can turn every challenge into a step closer to freedom and mastery of life. Number 5. Observation and mindfulness. On the journey of self-mastery, Miyamoto Musashi did not only emphasize discipline, selflessness, or steadfastness in hardship. He also laid a foundation for another subtle element: observation and mindfulness. If discipline is the strength of action, then mindfulness is the light that guides perception. A person may build a strong body and nurture a resilient will, but without mindfulness, they easily fall into illusion and are swayed by the external world. In combat, Musashi considered observation a vital skill. He once wrote, "The swordsman must see what others do not see, and hear what others do not hear." This is not only observing the opponent, but also observing oneself. If a swordsman lets emotions take over, he loses composure and makes fatal mistakes. But when he knows how to observe, he not only perceives every move of the enemy, but also recognizes the trembling and instability within his own mind. Observation, in Musashi's philosophy, is the art of perceiving essence rather than stopping at appearance. In modern life, this becomes even more crucial. We often rush to react to surface-level things. A single insult may spark anger. A small failure may cause discouragement. But if we look deeper, we see that a harsh remark may only reflect someone else's emotions, and a small failure may actually be a stepping stone to growth. Observation allows us to separate truth from the illusions painted by our feelings. Mindfulness is not only awareness, but the conscious choice in each thought and action. A mindful person knows what they are thinking, what they are feeling, and chooses how to respond consciously, rather than being ruled by instinct. Musashi trained mindfulness in every movement of the sword, in every step, and every breath. To him, a warrior was truly formidable only when the mind was undistracted, always clear and focused. In today's life, mindfulness helps us escape the trap of haste. When a debrated problem arises, instead of instantly flaring up in anger or sinking into sadness, we can pause for a few seconds to breathe, observe the emotion, and choose a proper response. Those mindful seconds are the very space where true freedom exists. Conversely, living without mindfulness is to live in ignorance. One without mindfulness is easily governed by bad habits, easily caught in negative cycles. They act without knowing why they act, and they live without knowing how they are living. This is the most dangerous state, for it robs us of control over ourselves. Musashi avoided this by constant inner observation. He did not let himself be carried away by illusions of victory or fame. It was this mindfulness that helped him stand firm in hundreds of battles, never once defeated by arrogance. We no longer wield swords in battle, but we can still train observation and mindfulness each day. Begin with the smallest things. When in conversation, truly listen, instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. When working, focus on one task at a time, instead of letting the mind scatter across dozens of worries. When emotions rise, give them a name. This is anger. This is anxiety. Naming separates us from the emotion and prevents it from controlling us. Another useful practice is keeping a self-observation journal. Each day, write a few lines about your feelings and actions. Over time, patterns appear. Which situations often break your composure? Which moments most easily discourage you? Only by observing clearly can we change. A good observer understands that the outer world is only a mirror reflecting the inner world. If the mind is full of anxiety, everywhere we look, we see risk. If the mind is filled with hope, everywhere we look, we see opportunity. Mindfulness reveals this truth and frees us from blaming the external world. We return inward, adjust our thoughts, and when the inner world changes, the outer world naturally follows. A mindful mind brings countless benefits. Fewer mistakes from impulsive reactions, greater focus and creativity, deeper inner peace, and the ability to live fully rather than letting days slip by unconsciously. A mindful person is not always cheerful, but they are always clear. They know when they are sad, when they are angry, and how not to be swept away. This is a quiet, yet enduring strength. In conclusion to this fifth pillar, observation and mindfulness are the art of seeing deeply and living consciously. They free us from the traps of illusion, allowing us to master emotions and actions. Musashi cultivated them to become an undefeated warrior. We can cultivate them to become masters of our own lives. By observing and living mindfully, we do not merely pass through life, we truly live in each moment, with a freedom and peace that no external force can take away. Number 6. Applying Musashi's philosophy in modern life. The philosophy of Miyamoto Musashi was forged in the turbulence of Japan's warring era, where death lurked behind every battle. Yet the values he left behind were not confined to the battlefield. His principles of discipline, selflessness, steadfastness, and mindfulness can still serve as guiding stars for modern people in a world no longer filled with swords and spears, but instead with pressures, comparisons, and temptations. Applying Musashi's philosophy today means learning to transform invisible challenges into opportunities for training, finding inner freedom, and mastering our own lives. At work, we constantly face pressure, competition, and failure. A single critique from a superior, a project that falls short, or a comparison with colleagues is enough for many to lose composure and confidence. This is where Musashi's spirit of discipline and steadfastness shows its strength. Those who embrace his philosophy do not let short-term setbacks define their worth. Instead, they treat them as lessons for growth. They use discipline to maintain steady performance, steadfastness to pursue long-term goals instead of giving up at obstacles. An entrepreneur may suffer repeated failures, financial losses, even doubt from friends. But if they persist in their vision, keeping disciplined in learning and improvement, success eventually arrives. Musashi chose the path of hardship to forge his will. We can do the same in our work, focusing deeply, managing emotions under pressure, and refusing to quit until goals are met. In relationships, the greatest challenge of modern life is dependence on the gaze and words of others. Social media has turned comparison into a daily habit, and self-worth is increasingly measured by fleeting likes and comments. But Musashi would remind us, true value does not lie in external validation, but in whether we live true to our own principles. In relationships, the spirit of selflessness helps us loosen our grip on praise and blame. When praised, we are not overly proud. When criticized, we are not overly wounded. Instead of endlessly seeking approval, we learn to observe ourselves and nurture serenity within. Relationships then become healthier, built on respect and understanding, not control or dependence. In personal life, Musashi was not only a swordsman but also a painter, calligrapher, and philosopher. This shows that he valued comprehensive training body, mind, and intellect alike. Modern people also need such balance. Train the body through exercise and healthy living. Train the intellect through reading and continuous learning. Train the spirit through meditation, journaling, or moments of self-reflection. Above all, train the will by maintaining discipline even when no one is watching. Only when body, intellect, and spirit are nurtured together can we truly master ourselves. In times of crisis, Musashi's spirit shines even brighter. He often faced severe conditions, yet it was in adversity that he discovered strength. With the same spirit, we can face modern crises. Losing a job, failing in business, heartbreak, or mental struggles. Instead of lamenting, we observe mindfully. Look at reality directly. Analyze causes, and draw lessons. Adversity becomes a chance to strengthen will and rebuild life. Many have endured major career failures, yet by refusing to quit, they learned essential lessons such as financial management that later enabled more enduring success. Musashi would say, "It is hardship that reveals true human strength." Another vital aspect is managing time and focus. Musashi emphasized, "A day without training is a day of decline." In today's world, time and focus are our most precious assets. Those who know how to control time, concentrate on what truly matters, and avoid distractions are those who master life. Applying Musashi's philosophy, we can set fixed hours for study, work, and rest, holding ourselves accountable instead of being ruled by endless phone notifications. Mindfulness in every act also means knowing what we are doing, why we are doing it, and refusing to let distractions steal our life energy. Another lesson Musashi left us is the value of simplicity. He rejected luxury, choosing austerity to keep his spirit light. This does not mean rejecting comfort, but it reminds us of the power of a minimalist life. In today's consumer society, people feel pressured to own more, to prove worth through possessions. Yet the more we cling to desire, the less freedom we have. To live simply is to know what is enough, to choose only what truly matters. Simplicity does not make us poor. On the contrary, it enriches the soul. In conclusion, Musashi's philosophy is not merely the story of an ancient Japanese warrior, but a compass for navigating the modern world. In work, he teaches us discipline and steadfastness. In relationships, he teaches us to let go of ego and live selflessly. In personal life, he teaches us to cultivate balance and simplicity. And in adversity, he teaches us to transform crisis into opportunity. Musashi lived his life fully by these principles and became a legend. As for us, if we apply them today, every day can become a small battle of self-training. When we master ourselves moment by moment, we gradually master our entire lives. Number 7. An illustrative story and profound lesson. In the life journey of Miyamoto Musashi, there are stories that not only engrave his talent into history, but also illuminate his deep philosophy of self-mastery. One of the most famous is his duel with Sasaki Kojiro, renowned for his long sword, Bakodzuki, and lightning-fast technique. This battle took place on Ganryu Island and has since become a symbol of wisdom, composure, and mindfulness in every moment. Instead of arriving at the appointed time, Musashi deliberately came late. While Kojiro grew angry from waiting, Musashi calmly stepped ashore, carrying only a wooden sword carved from an oar. To many, this seemed reckless. Kojiro wielded a long, razor-sharp blade, while Musashi held only wood. But the choice was no accident. Musashi had observed and realized that Kojiro's long sword was both an advantage and a weakness. By crafting a wooden sword just slightly longer, Musashi neutralized his opponent's strength, while also unsettling Kojiro with the unusual weapon. When the duel began, Kojiro charged in fury, swinging his sword. Musashi, however, remained perfectly calm. In a single decisive moment, he struck the fatal blow and defeated Kojiro. The fight ended swiftly, and Musashi's victory did not come from brute force but from keen observation, a mindful spirit, and mastery over emotion. Had he been ruled by ego, he might have arrived early, eager to appear fierce, and fought head-on. Instead, through composure, he turned the duel into a living demonstration of the philosophy that the greatest victory is victory over the self. This story offers us many lessons. In modern life, our opponents may not be swordsmen with blades, but rather work pressure, competition, or careless criticism. If we react impulsively, we lose composure and make mistakes. But if we observe, remain mindful, and stay steadfast, we can transform disadvantage into advantage. Wisdom lies in seeing what others overlook and choosing actions guided by clarity, not by emotion. Beyond Ganryu Island, Musashi's entire life was proof of relentless training. He never stopped learning, observing, and challenging himself through austerity. Even in old age, he continued writing the Book of Five Rings to pass on his wisdom. In those pages, we see not only a swordsman but also a philosopher devoted to the lifelong exploration of the self. Musashi's spirit can be reflected in our lives today. A young entrepreneur, instead of chasing hot trends, chooses to steadily build a solid foundation and eventually becomes a leader. A regular worker, instead of giving up after losing a job, commits to learning new skills and finds a stronger career path. Or someone heartbroken in love, instead of drowning in despair, chooses self-cultivation and inner peace, later building a healthier and deeper relationship. All of these examples echo Musashi's spirit. Using hardship as the forge, mindfulness as the light, discipline as the foundation, and selflessness as strength. It is worth remembering that Musashi never lost in more than 60 duels, yet he never considered victory as merely defeating opponents. To him, true victory meant conquering ego, fear, and anger within himself. That is the message we too must remember. In a turbulent world, the strongest person is not the wealthiest, nor the most powerful, but the one who can master themselves in every circumstance. In conclusion, the story of Musashi and the lessons of his life remind us that each of us is engaged in a battle. This battle is not loud with the clash of swords, but no less fierce. The battle with procrastination, fear, greed, and comparison. If we apply Musashi's spirit, we will not only overcome hardship, but also transform it into a chance to grow. For ultimately, the greatest victory in life is not defeating others, but defeating ourselves. Number 8. The greatest victory is victory over oneself. At the end of the journey of reflecting on the philosophy of Miyamoto Musashi, we can see one thing clearly. Every battle in the outside world, no matter how fierce, is temporary. The enemy of today may become tomorrow's friend. Today's success may turn into tomorrow's failure. But there is one battle that never ends, and it is the battle that determines the destiny of every person, the battle with oneself. Musashi defeated dozens of opponents and survived hundreds of battles. Yet what made him a legend was not his glorious victories, but his mastery over his own inner world. He practiced discipline to sustain resilience, selflessness to avoid being shackled by fame, steadfastness to endure hardship, and mindfulness to see the essence of things. These principles not only kept him undefeated on the battlefield, but also made him a free man, free from fear, blind ambition, and the smallness of ego. Victory over oneself means mastering emotions rather than being mastered by them. It is knowing how to restrain anger, how to stay calm in crisis, and how to choose peace over noise. Victory over oneself also means overcoming procrastination. Practicing discipline to do what must be done, even without motivation. It means daring to let go of meaningless desires. Living simply to discover freedom in the soul. Most importantly, victory over oneself is remaining steadfast, continuing to walk forward even when the road is long and rough. In modern society, this battle plays out every day. When we wake and must choose between rising early to train or staying in bed a little longer, that is a battle. When faced with work pressure, choosing between calm problem-solving and angry outbursts, that too is a battle. When we see someone else succeed and must choose between envy or learning, that is another battle. And when confronted with temptation, choosing between short-term pleasure and long-term value, that decision itself is the measure of whether we have mastered ourselves. Musashi left us an invaluable legacy. The reminder that the strongest person is not the one who defeats thousands of enemies, but the one who defeats himself. For only when we master ourselves are we truly free, free from the judgment of others, free from fear of failure, free from the bondage of desire, and free to live a life true to the values we choose. Take a moment to reflect. How many times have we let anger ruin a relationship? How many times has procrastination cost us an opportunity? How many times has ego dragged us into meaningless disputes? And how many times have we regretted losing our calm, abandoning our goals, or failing to recognize what truly mattered? These experiences all prove that the greatest enemy is not outside but within. Victory over oneself does not come in a single day. It is a lifelong journey. Yet every small step counts. Each time we choose discipline over indulgence, we move forward. Each time we choose calm over haste, we advance again. Each time we choose perseverance over giving up, we achieve another victory. These small wins, accumulated over years, transform us into stronger, steadier, freer beings. Musashi lived his life wholly by these principles and became a legend. And we, if we train ourselves daily, can also become the strongest version of who we are. For in the end, life is not measured by how many others we defeat, but by how many times we conquer ourselves. The greatest victory in life is not standing on the peak, admired by others, but standing firm against the storms within. When we master ourselves, fear vanishes, distractions lose their grip, and we walk through life with peace, strength, and freedom. And this is the most precious gift Musashi's philosophy offers to posterity. Master yourself, and you will master your life. Number 9. Conclusion. Each of us is living amid countless silent battles. Some battles are with work pressures, some with the praise and criticism of others, and some with fear and procrastination within ourselves. These battles are no less fierce than Musashi's battlefields of old. The difference is this: today's victories are not decided by the blade of a sword, but by discipline, selflessness, steadfastness, and mindfulness. Musashi proved that a person can live undefeated not because of luck, but because of self-mastery. He lived a life of freedom, unbound by ego, desire, or fame. And that lesson remains just as valuable for us today. Only when you conquer yourself do you truly conquer life. So, beginning today, start with the smallest of choices. Choose discipline over procrastination. Choose calm over anger. Choose perseverance over giving up. And choose mindfulness over living unconsciously. Each choice accumulates into strength, step by step, leading you toward the freedom Musashi once affirmed. Remember this: the world outside may be noisy, but your life is truly shaped only when you master yourself. And if you find these values meaningful, don't forget to hit subscribe, so we may continue this journey together, training the mind, nurturing inner peace, and becoming the strongest version of ourselves.